What if I told you that wisdom cries out in the streets, yet many still choose folly? Or that the path to life is lined with understanding, but some prefer the road to destruction? These aren't just ancient musings, these are timeless truths from the book of Proverbs. Today, we're diving into 7 profound insights from Proverbs 8, where wisdom speaks and kings rise or fall by her words. Proverbs 8, verses 1 to 3. Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way, where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries aloud. Picture this: the bustling streets of ancient Jerusalem. Merchants haggle, children play, and amidst it all, a voice rises above the din. It's not the voice of a king or a warrior, but of wisdom herself. She's not hiding in secret chambers or whispering to a select few. No, she's shouting from the rooftops, calling out to anyone who will listen, but who's paying attention. Let's look at King Rehoboam, Solomon's son. When he ascended to the throne, wisdom stood at the crossroads, calling out to him. The elders advised him to lighten the people's burden, to serve them so they would serve him in return. It was the voice of wisdom, echoing in the halls of power. Yet Rehoboam turned away. He chose instead to listen to his young friends, those who grew up with him in luxury and knew little of the people's struggles. "My father made your yoke heavy," he told the people, "but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions." The result: a kingdom divided. 10 tribes broke away, leaving Rehoboam with a fraction of the empire his father had built, all because he ignored wisdom's call. Proverbs 8 verses 10 and 11. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Now, let's turn our attention to King Ahab. Here was a man who had it all: power, wealth, a kingdom at peace. Yet he desired more. When Naboth refused to sell his vineyard, Ahab sulked like a child, denied a toy. His wife, Jezebel, seeing his distress, hatched a plan to falsely accuse Naboth and have him killed. Ahab could have chosen wisdom. He could have recognized that integrity and justice were worth more than all the vineyards in Israel. Instead, he chose silver and gold, expanding his property at the cost of an innocent man's life. The prophet Elijah confronted him. "Have you not murdered a man and seized his property?" Ahab's choice led to his downfall, and the dogs that licked Naboth's blood would one day lick his own. Proverbs 8, verses 15 and 16. By me kings reign and rulers issue decrees that are just. By me princes govern, and nobles, all who rule on earth. Consider the reign of King Josiah. He came to the throne at just 8 years old, inheriting a kingdom that had turned away from God. But unlike his father and grandfather, Josiah chose to seek wisdom. When the book of the law was discovered during temple renovations, Josiah didn't dismiss it. He tore his robes in repentance and immediately set about reforming the nation. He destroyed the high places of false gods, reinstituted the Passover, and led the people back to the worship of the one true God. Josiah understood that true authority comes from wisdom, and wisdom comes from God. His reign was marked by justice and righteousness, a stark contrast to the kings who came before and after him. Proverbs 8 verse 17. I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. Let's shift our focus to a man who wasn't a king, but whose influence shaped the destiny of nations. I'm talking about Mordecai, the uncle of Queen Esther. Mordecai lived in a time of great danger for the Jewish people. When he uncovered a plot to assassinate the king, he didn't keep quiet to protect himself. He reported it, saving the king's life. When Haman plotted to destroy the Jews, Mordecai didn't flee. Instead, he sought wisdom, urging Esther to use her position to save her people. "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" he asked her. Mordecai's wisdom not only saved his own life but the lives of all the Jews in the Persian Empire. Proverbs 8 verse 13. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior and perverse speech. Now, let's talk about a man who learned this lesson the hard way. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. At the height of his power, he looked out over his kingdom and declared, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Pride goes before a fall, and Nebuchadnezzar's fall was spectacular. He lost his mind and lived like an animal for 7 years. When his sanity was restored, he had learned to fear the Lord and hate his own arrogance. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. Proverbs 8, 35 and 36. For those who find me find life and receive favor from the Lord, but those who fail to find me harm themselves. All who hate me love death. Consider the contrasting fates of 2 kings, Hezekiah and Manasseh. Hezekiah sought wisdom and found life. When faced with the threat of the Assyrian army, he turned to God in prayer. Isaiah brought him a message of deliverance, and that night, the angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Manasseh, on the other hand, rejected wisdom and embraced death. He rebuilt the high places his father had destroyed, practiced sorcery, and even sacrificed his own son in the fire. His actions brought God's judgment on Judah, a judgment that not even Josiah's reforms could ultimately avert. Proverbs 8:22 and 23. The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works, before his deeds of old. I was formed long ages ago, at the very beginning, when the world came to be. Finally, let's consider the profound truth that wisdom isn't just a human construct or a set of good ideas. Wisdom was there at the beginning, a fundamental part of God's creation. Think of Joshua, standing on the banks of the Jordan River. The promised land lay before him, but so did fortified cities and fierce warriors. It would have been easy to rely on human strategy alone, but Joshua understood that true wisdom comes from God. When he encountered the commander of the Lord's army, Joshua fell face down in reverence. He didn't ask for battle plans or military advice. He asked, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" Joshua recognized that wisdom, true, divine wisdom, was essential for the task ahead. As we conclude our journey through Proverbs 8, let's remember that wisdom isn't hidden. She calls out to us, just as she called out to kings and commoners thousands of years ago. The question is, will we listen? Will we choose her instruction over silver, her knowledge over gold? In a world that often seems to celebrate foolishness, let's be like Joshua, like Josiah, like Mordecai. Let's seek wisdom, for in finding her we find life itself. And in a time when voices clamor for our attention from every screen and street corner, may we tune our ears to the timeless call of wisdom, standing at the crossroads, ready to guide us home.